Hey, what's going on, everybody? And this is Cameron here. Welcome back to Legacy's Journey. This is a podcast where we talk about creating what outlives you. We're talking to a lot of marketing agency owners just because for my business, which is Kinley Consulting, we focus on strategic financial growth for marketing agencies so that they can live their dream life and not sacrifice that family time. We just got back from Austin, Costa Rica at this week-long conference, and now we are here. I had to link up with somebody who I've been watching for a while just in how he treats his family, his wife, his kids, how he talks about them. And I'm like, this guy would be perfect. Not because I don't even know everything he does in business. I know he's good, and I know he's been doing it for over 10 years. But I was more impressed with how he treats his family, how he talks about them. And you can tell that he cares. So I'm like, yo, you got to come bless us on the podcast. So everybody, this is Damon Burton. I'm going to give you the floor. Tell them name, where you're based out of, name of the company, how many years you've been getting into it.
Yeah, thanks, Cameron. I appreciate the opportunity to chat. So Damon Burton founded an SEO agency almost 17 years ago called SEO National. Married also 17 years, got 3 kids. That's kind of the crash course. Yeah. So I'm excited to talk because as we touched on briefly before you hit record, there's a million podcasts out there that talk about business and very literal step-by-step things. But the conversations I always enjoy and the ones that I think are more impactful are the ones that are a little more loose format that also touch on, the personal journey and things like that. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, man. All right, let's jump into it because y'all, he was about to go into this story, and I was like, no, wait till I hit the button. So again, we are always talking about family. And like I said, one of the things that I appreciate just in continuing to learn about you is like, for example, I've seen him talk about his wife and how he's like, hey, because she held me down at the beginning and now we're blessed to be successful. I would love to pay her back by just creating more memories and experiences. And like I said, we just came back from Costa Rica. He bought the whole family. They were at the pool. I don't know what all we ate, but we ate whatever the restaurants were. So I guess let's just start by telling me let's go this way. Your spouse. Okay, I didn't know that you got married apparently when you started the business. So what was that like? Like year 1, not even a full year in. How did that go? How did she respond? What was that conversation like?
Well, it's actually a whole other story in itself. So, I got married towards the end of 2006. I started the business at the beginning of 2007. Her and I had been together for about a year and a half before we got married. And so I was already entrepreneurial. I had a side hustle kind of thing, doing what I do now, working on websites and things like that. So she was already exposed to, I had a 9-to-5 job. I also at the time worked in radio. So I had a corporate day job. I worked radio on the weekends and nights. And then in between then I started a car enthusiast website. And so I had a lot of side passions, and I wouldn't quite call them side hustles, but they were very similar to side hustles in the fact that, I was pursuing them actively. And
Right.
so when the opportunity, the reason why I say there's a story behind when I fully became an entrepreneur is because the last person I worked for before I started my business was a really successful gentleman, and he had a business before the business I was in, and there he got a little greedy and he had a criminal suit, um, or a civil suit. The criminal suit didn't catch up until a couple of years later, and so a couple of years later, now he's in this other business that I had the opportunity to work for, and it ended up getting shut down. So this was a company that was in Vegas. I'm in Utah. When I came on board, he said, "Hey, move to Vegas." I'm like, "I'm newly married. I don't want to live in Vegas." And he said, "Okay, you can work at home." So I took that as an opportunity to start working on my business on the side, or what would eventually become my business. So in the morning, my wife worked at a hospital. She'd get up at like 4 a.m. And I thought, well, why don't I do that too? And use those hours between 4 a.m. and 8 or 9-ish to work on the Vegas company stuff. And then that basically gave me the rest of the day to work on my side stuff.
Okay.
Now, what had happened was one day I couldn't get a hold of the Vegas company. And so this was before Slack and things like that. So we used AOL Instant Messenger. And so I get a message from one of the other designers, and the designer says, "Did you hear what happened?" And I said, "No, I can't get a hold of anybody." And he says, "They got shut down." And so we're talking like ATF, FTC, movie style doors getting kicked in, guns drawn, like shut down. So the criminal case caught up to the guy for the same one that he had a civil suit on earlier. So the guy at the age of 32 got sentenced to 29 and a half years in federal prison. And we're talking about a guy that had, I think he had 7 kids, and there's a whole other story to that too. So the way that ties into my entrepreneurial journey is at that moment I had 3 choices. So the first choice was to wait and see if I got a paycheck, because the way that this company was set up is each department was basically set up as a separate shell company. So the design, that there was the product company, and then the design company would service the product company, and then the invoicing department would be set up as a different department, and they would service these other things. So on paper I was in a different company, but they were all ran by the same guy. And so the people that ran the design side said, no, you're fine, you'll still get a paycheck. So I could either wait to see if I truly did get a paycheck, or the second choice was go look for a new job, or the third choice was to bet on myself. And so what I did at that time is I sat down and I did the math, and I said, well, we don't have any kids yet. My wife has a job. I have a side hustle where I'm making 20 grand. And so we have enough to pay the bills. Now, of course, I'm going to lose half of my income, but we're not going to be homeless. And that to me sounded like as calculated as a risk as I'd probably ever have an opportunity to take. So at that point, I never waited on the company. To this day, I've never heard from anybody from the business, never got my last paycheck. And I also never went and looked for a job. And so I doubled down on myself. And by freeing up that time, if I remember right, it only took about 3 months to make back that other 30-ish grand, because now I could dedicate that time to serving the clients that I had started to build up on the side.
Right.
So that's kind of where the business was birthed, was out of a choice. And then since then, there's lots of other stories along the journey. But that's how I made a decision and took the leap of faith.
So then, what does your wife say? Because I mean, sure y'all doing good, and then this company just leaves, and now not only is our income messed up, but now you're about to do your own thing. Like, how did she take that?
She's always been very supportive, and I think she'll agree part of it is out of naivety. So she didn't really understand the situation. Um, I don't think we weren't at risk of any dire situation. We were just house
Okay, okay.
poor, so we could still pay our bills and put food on the table. We just couldn't. We didn't have disposable income, so it wasn't. That's why I say it was as calculated risk as I imagine I could take. So yeah, I mean, it sucks to lose half your income, but it was a bet that I was confident in taking, and I think because I was confident in it, she didn't really have any second guesses about it. And so I've been fortunate in that respect, where she's always just kind of been like, okay, whatever.
Which I mean, that's good because she could have been the other way, like, let's think about this and talk about this. So that's
Yeah,
good. All
yeah.
right, cool. So now you said now you guys have 3 kids. So I know, so 17 years of hard work, building clients, learning lessons, I'm sure. So now kids come into the picture.
hmm
How does it go from just you and her and, babe, I understand, go do your thing, to like, oh man, we got a baby, or now we got a toddler, or
hmm
somebody going into school? Like, how did that affect not only the relationship, but the business?
So I was really fortunate to think about that in advance. There's part of that I think was, I don't want to say luck, but there's a part of my thought process that I don't know where it started, and I can't take credit for. And what I mean by that is, I've always been very forward thinking, and the perpetual optimist. And so there's part of it that was that, and then the other part was I'm the oldest of 7. And so when you're a parent, or about to be a parent, or considering being a parent, everyone always tells you, oh, cherish it because the time goes fast. And so we all know that. But me being the oldest of 7, and also having that in the back of my mind, I was able to project that into looking forward, and use my siblings as an analogy of my future kids. And I could tangibly see the speed in which they were growing, and then I would be able to visualize that and go, holy crap, one day my kids will grow that fast. And so the combination of all those things, I was very forward thinking. And I remember sitting in our living room at our first house, and when I was freshly self-employed, and I remember telling myself, the phrase that I remember saying in my head was grind it out now so I don't have to grind it out later. And so that's not to say that I don't, put in the time when I need to these days, but the thesis of that is work the long nights now before I have kids, work the weekends now before I have kids. So fast forward to where I am at today, I don't have to. And so I always looked into the future and said, okay, let's make these sacrifices while I have that window. And so by the time that we started, we waited 5 years before we had kids. And so I was very fortunate to be able to, be strategic about how um, kids would come into our life and how I would balance business with that. And when my wife got pregnant with our first kid, she was able to stay home. And so we planned it out where she put in her notice when she was, in her last trimester or whatever, and then she just never went back. And these were all things we were very fortunate to be strategic about. So I think it was just the foresight, and this plays into a lot of other things we might talk about where I learned lessons and how other people did things better or worse. And I was able to go, okay, well, you can learn from people doing positive things, but I also often learn from all the negative things that my former employers did and how they destroyed their marriages and things like that. So I think I learned more from how to not do things, including my personal life growing up, than I did from learning how to do things the right way.
Okay, wait. So you now you starting to drop gems. So we got to slow down so the people can keep up. All right. So you said wife pregnant. She plans the time off, and then she just never went back. So stay at home mom.
Mm-hmm.
How is that? Because see, I find it funny to your point about you start to learn when you get around other successful people. Like, how are you doing this? How are you handling this? And it's like I'm starting to hear that more and more. Like, especially with
Mm-hmm.
agencies, how whoever's working, the other parent tends to stay at home with the kids. It's typically never one; it's either two or three. And I'm so interested to hear that because we do the same thing here. We got three kids, 8, 5, and 1. So I'm always interested to hear like what led to that choice. What does that look like on a daily basis for you guys? Because I know the phone doesn't stop ringing, email doesn't stop,
Mm.
messages, client requests. So what does that look like on a daily rhythm? What led to that choice? Like I got 50 million questions now.
Yeah. So my wife was fortunate in the ability to identify um, before we had kids that being a mom was her passion. So she, before even her and I met, she just knew she wanted to be a mom. So there wasn't really much of a discussion of like, hey, do you want to be a stay-at-home mom? If anything, she kind of already planned on it. And then I think it's kind of the opposite in a few ways, where she's very grateful that we had the opportunity for that. I don't want to say dream, but that vision of her to actually come a reality. And so it was something that she always already had in mind. So it wasn't like a negotiation thing where we had to decide the pros and cons. It was something that she was passionate about, and it was something that I was fortunate enough to be able to support financially, and so it just is what it is. So that came natural in our relationship. Now, as far as like how do we balance it and things like that, so when we moved into this house, we've been in this house for 12 years. And when I was younger, when we're talking about learning from how to not do things, so I
Okay.
grew up lower middle class. My parents divorced when I was 2. My mom then remarried twice after that. The third gentleman that she married was an alcoholic. They were together for however many years, 20 something years long into my adulthood. And very early on, even it might have even been before they got married, when it was just me and my one brother that's 2 years younger than I am. So then we got 5 other brothers and sisters that are half brothers and sisters. I remember very early on, my mom sat us down and said, well, clearly you aren't happy with this person being in my life. So what would you guys are my kids. What would you like me to do? And we both immediately said we don't want him around. And that didn't change. And if they went on to get married and have kids and things like that. So obviously I love my brothers and sisters. So prior to them being born, it was, and then long after, it was a toxic addition to the family. And so when we talk about like what I learned as a kid, it was like, okay, um, don't do those things. Don't have an unstable family environment. Don't be financially insecure.
Right.
Don't be shackled and not have freedom of time. And so I was able to visualize all those things that I didn't want in my life. And so part of that was we would move a lot. And so some years we'd move as many as 2 to 3 times a year. And it was always to wherever we could. It was
Wait, per
the,
year?
yeah, not every year, but some years, I think the longest I ever lived in a single household was, would have been 4 years, maybe. And so, all the times before and after that, we were just constantly moving. And so that was a thing where I said, okay, I want to be able to provide roots and stability for my family as an adult. So the reason why I mentioned that is like this house we're in now, before, and this comes back into how do you balance things, and I'll show you something behind me here in a minute that's funny. Um, so it was like when we started considering buying a new house, I told my wife, I said, well, if we're going to move, because now we have a newborn. By the time we ended up buying this house, he was 11 months old. And I said, if we're shopping for a house, let's make it our forever home. And she knew the whole story about my childhood and moving. And I said, I want to be able to just pick a place and stay there forever for our kids. And so we looked like lunatics buying this house, because we bought a 4,300 square foot house with 6 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms with one 11-month old. And so, but
See.
that's like where I talk about looking into the future and going, what will provide you stability and what will minimize headaches down the road.
Right.
And so we moved into this house, and now we fill it out perfectly, because we have me and my wife's room, each of our 3 kids have a room, and then I have this office, and then we have a guest room. So we actively occupy all the rooms now. And so there's like just little things like that where I'm always planting seeds to provide. I'm a huge fan of delayed gratification. And so it's like, okay, if, and I realize um, how fortunate I am to have a house like this. So I'm trying to like balance how I approach this. But it's like back then it was a risk to buy this house financially for me. Um, do we want to be house poor or not? I don't know. With the dreams and confidence that I'm going to pursue greater financial stability, so then long term we won't be house poor and things like that. So I'm always looking into the future of what's the risk reward and delayed gratification. So coming back to your question, how we balance it now, because we have an accommodating house, I have this dedicated office, and so this is my space, right? And so that makes it easier to focus. And then as far as like you asked about phones and emails, that's actually kind of a whole other topic, because that comes down to the boundaries that you're willing to set. So for me, I don't give clients my cell phone number. And in fact, I put in our contracts that they don't. It literally says, "Hey, we like you, but we love our families more. So you don't get my cell phone number. Our office hours shut off at 5. They're not open on the weekends. We don't check emails on the weekends. I don't expect my team members to check emails on the weekends. So you literally can't get a hold of me or my team on the weekends. It's just not an option, because I take that time and I protect that for my family. And then whatever I open up for myself, then I think it's fair enough that my team has that opportunity too. So I protect those same rights for my team, and I advise them, don't give your number out to cell phone, don't give your cell phone out to clients. If you want to, that's your risk. But you have to stand by the boundaries that you want to protect your priorities around. So I don't have Messenger on my phone because I don't want to get beeps all the time. So the only time I get Facebook message, like our Facebook messages, I only get when I'm on our desktop. So you have to decide what you want, and then what boundaries you need to create that environment, and then what systems you need to put in place to protect those boundaries.
Whoa. Hold on. I gotta write this down. All right. Wait. That. See, I told y'all. Man got a lot to say. All right. You have to determine what goals you want so that you can put the proper boundaries in place to support them,
Mm-hmm.
and then create the systems to facilitate
to protect those boundaries. Yeah. And you have to enforce them. So like we'll have we'll have maybe maybe I had a Facebook friend that was a friend before a client. And so we have these engagements back and forth online. And so they're used to certain cadence of communication, but that cadence was a friendship cadence. And so whenever I start to blend business and personal relationships, I make sure to clearly articulate these are two separate things. And so when I remember I have one client who I actually just gave my cell phone now because we're also friends, but he didn't get my cell phone for a year. And so the first time I met up with him with lunch, he said, is that number your office? I said, yes. And he says, you're not going to give me your cell phone number, are you? And I said, I'm not. And he goes, okay, I can respect that. And he goes, because I will be the guy that will call you. And so what's interesting is a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when you're new to entrepreneurship, like I'm probably talking nonsense right now, and you're paranoid and going, well, I feel like I need to be available 24/7 and I want to take care of my customer and this and this and this. And like, yes, you want to take care of your customer. But the problem is if you open yourself up and don't set boundaries, then you start to get annoyed with that person. And then when you start to get annoyed with that person, you start to devalue the deliverable products that you give them. And so when you protect that, when you're in work mode, you give more in work mode. And so it was funny. After us going back and forth for a long time, we'd communicate on phone, regular phone, my office phone, or he'd send me a Facebook message, and but I reinforced those boundaries, and I'm like, hey, I'm happy to chat with you on Facebook, but I'm not checking it all the time, and don't expect an immediate resolution to a work question via Facebook message. And here's the rules of engagement. In the contract it says our preferred method of communication is email because we can throttle it and it's documentable. And so when I messaged him, he was asking me something, I can't even remember what it was, and I said, dude, I'll give you my cell phone now that you understand the rules of engagement, but don't ever cross that line. And he wrote back and he's like, yeah, no, cool, I totally get it now, I won't. And so I gave him my cell phone, and he wrote the funniest thing. I'm going to do a post about it in the upcoming days. I screenshotted his reply, and he says, this is hilarious. In my phone book, I literally have billionaires and celebrities and professional sports players, and your phone number is the one I cherish the most. Because I wouldn't give it
He
to
can't
him.
use it all. Right. You limited that access. There you go.
So when you set these boundaries, back to early entrepreneurship, you are actually doing them a favor and yourself a favor, because then they appreciate the integrity that you have. And as long as it's not weird unless you make it weird. So as
Right.
long as you communicate why you're doing it, that it's for the protection of yourself and your family, and it's for the integrity of your relationship, everybody's cool with it. It only becomes weird if you don't establish that and then later they ask for it, and then you have to like trip over yourself and and go, well, I'd rather not, because so I just put it out there, and then, but you have to stand by it, because if you start to, um, give a little, then once they're in, they're just going to run all over you.
That was good. Wow. Okay, there was a lot there, y'all. So I'm gonna try to summarize it. Basically, in so many words, you need to be disciplined enough to set boundaries, or else clients will maybe inadvertently take advantage of the time that you provide. And you don't want to do that, especially when you're trying to protect that family relationship. So, this is a perfect segue, right? Into, okay, back to family. So, you have the established family time cut off at probably 5 or 6, like most people. So with wifey being stay-at-home mom, are you homeschooling too?
No, we've considered it, but I quickly realized that for the protection of everybody's sanity, I should probably not homeschool.
We want to be happy when we see each other. We don't want to be angry.
Yeah,
I,
yeah, it's
I
like,
feel that one. Okay. So then that means, all right, so like right now that means wifey is somewhere in the house. So like what are some of the things that you guys do to connect? Because I know when you're on, you're working super duper hard. But like are there some things that you guys try to make it a priority to do? Like maybe it's coffee or a certain lunch or something like that, a certain place you go?
But for my wife specifically,
Yep.
no, it's a good question, because that's one area that I want to be more consistent at. It's kind of funny. It's like when we have more time with, whether the kids are in school or not in school, it's almost like we run into the opposite availability. So, during when the kids are in school, then it's like in theory we could go to lunch. But then she's got other things because now she has a little bit of extra time, and so then she's using that time to fill up with things that she wants to do. So it's we don't have a consistent thing, and so this is funny to be talking about to me because it's literally on my calendar where it's like test things. So we're kind of A/B testing things right now to go like, what kind of things could we do consistently that we appreciate?
Mhm.
And so that's a so I don't have a specific answer of how we spend time. We don't have a reoccurring thing that we do. What we're really good at is a lot of random stuff. And so,
Better.
yeah, well, I think you need a little bit of both. The random stuff is fun. Spontaneity is fun. But there's something rewarding about having um, like
Something to look forward to.
a pattern. Yeah, like a routine. Like routines are comforting, right? And so
Yeah.
I think we're
Yeah.
trying to figure out at least some little thing that we can do that is routine. But right now, no, we don't have it. But we're trying to figure it out.
That's what's up. Okay, cool. See, so you you sound like me. I'm trying to figure it out too. Um,
Mhm.
Easy one. There's this book. I don't even know where it says since we just moved, but it's called 50, I think, First Dates. And literally, what we tried to do at one point, don't do it anymore, which we should get back to. But every week, it has a page for you to just do a random date night idea. And
Mm.
it was so interesting because I didn't have to come up with something. She didn't have that pressure. Just open it up. We're on week 3. I think one was like go to a restaurant you don't go to. Another one was like go to a restaurant but try all new things. So I thought it was really cool. Just to go through that. One was like make tie dye t-shirts,
Hmm.
which I was like I don't care, but for the sake of date night. So just you may
There's
not like it. Who knows?
there's a book that I can see from here, but I can't grab it. That is like that, but it it has there's 3 different versions. There's a family version, there's a couples version, and then there's like a intimate bed version. And so it's like that, but in it has um, the lottery scratch kind of things, and
Oh,
and it'll give you a key, so you don't know what it is, but it'll give you a key that says it takes a lot of time or a little time, and it's in your house or out of your house, or there's a car icon, so that means you travel, or there's a walking outline, and so it's in walking distance, where there's trees and you go do it out in nature. So you can kind of look at this without knowing what it is, but go, oh yeah, I want to do something that's cheap and not far, and then you can scratch that off. Or like, no, I want to drive somewhere, or I'm willing to spend money. So there's little family adventure things like that, that we've done a little bit with the kids, and so I bought all 3, and we've only opened the kids one, but that's been pretty cool, and we'll bust that out every once in a while.
cool, cool. Well, now since you brought up the kids, so like, do you and the kids have something that you guys maybe look forward to every week, to get into, participate in? Like in our case, we do pancakes every Saturday, so they already know if it's Saturday, they know it's cleanup day, and they
Mm.
know we making pancakes, and it's what are we putting in them? Everybody has their idea. So do you guys have some like a favorite food place or activity or thing to do that everybody as a family kind of looks forward to?
Yeah, we do a thing that I call day trips. So I rotate between my 3 kids. So about every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we're going somewhere, and so I let them pick where they want to go. And so we'll fly somewhere. For it to logistically make sense, it has to be about a 2.5 hour flight or less. And so we would just do a single day. So it started by me going to San Diego. So probably 8 or 9 years ago. I we would go to San Diego a couple times a year, and every time I come back, it was just for me, it was refreshing beach time, comfortable weather, and it was just a detachment. And when I'd get back, I'd realize how much better I felt. And so one day I got thinking, I'm like, why do I not just fly there and back? And so
In the same day?
yeah, so I did like a 6 a.m. flight there and then a 6 p.m. flight back. And I was like, this is amazing because it's like 90 minutes. Um, you get, you're with, once you land, you're 10 minutes from the boardwalk. I'd bring my laptop and I'd just go sit on the beach and work for 6 hours. And then I'd catch a ride back and fly home. And if you book it in advance enough, it's like $150. It was like nothing. And so I'm like, okay, this is cool. I get out, I reset. It's affordable, but I'm not away from my wife and kids, and I can just get right
Oh, because
back.
it's the same day.
Yeah. So I started doing that years ago, and then one day I was talking to one of my kids, and I got thinking, I was like, well, why don't I do this for my kids too? And so I started with my oldest kid, and I said, do you want to go to San Diego for the day? And so I brought him and we came back the same day, and it was awesome. So then I was like, why don't I make that a thing? So I still do my own day trips, but now I do it with my kids, and we've extended their versions to it can be a single day or it can be a whole weekend now. And so I'll do these day trips. And so like I've been to Vegas 3 times in the last 3 months because my oldest wanted to go. He's 12, and so he is starting to get into malls and Nikes, and he's big into shoes and this and that. And so we don't have a lot of malls around where we're at, and there's one that's close, and then there's 2 or 3 that are like 45 minutes away, and that's it. And so he wanted to go check out more malls, and I told him, I said, we just don't have any. Why don't we go to Vegas though? That's a 55-minute flight. There's tons of malls. We'll go do our day trip. So I took him, and then I always let them pick a car too. So like whenever we travel and we have a rental car, they each take turns just picking out whatever car it is at the car lot. But then when I take them on the one-on-one trips, I'll do like Turo, and I'll rent something fancy. And so my 12-year-old, we went to Vegas for the weekend, and we rented a McLaren. And so
Wait. Time out. So you're telling me there are family day trips and then there are one-on-one kid day trips.
yeah.
And you're saying, hey, you pull it up on whatever the rental car site is and you just say which one you want to ride in.
Well, if it's all of us, we just do like a normal rental car place, and then I let them pick when we get to the lot. But when it's the one-on-ones, I'll pick something fancy. So like after the first time, then my 8-year-old, then of course he wants to do what Big Brother did. So then he wanted to go to Vegas too, and he wanted to rent the exact same McLaren. And so we ended up getting the same one. And then my 5-year-old daughter, of course, wants to do what Big Brothers do. And I'm like, I'm not renting you a McLaren.
Right, you're 5. You need
so
like 5.
she got like the cheapest convertible that there was, and because in her mind it was all the same, it was a convertible, and so she's like,
Right.
cool. So I let her pick I brought up Turo, and I just filtered it down to $100 or less and convertibles, and she found a BMW that had like red seats, and so she was super excited about the red seats. So like the last 3 trips have been all Vegas because it just started a demand, and we went and did cool things. So if you're not familiar with Vegas, there's a place called Area 15, and in it has an attraction called a Mega Mart, and it's a fake grocery store that's kind of it's not an escape room, but it's like a themed room. There's a storyline that you're trying to figure out, and so it's interactive and it's really cool. And they have like hidden rooms. They open up a freezer door in the grocery store, and it's really a hidden pathway into like this tunnel that has psychedelic lighting in it. And so we'll go somewhere fun, and then we'll actually pick an activity to do as well. And out in Vegas, they also have a speedway. And so anybody listening, if you want something that's cheap or free, like if you have access to Vegas for cheap flights or you're in Vegas, they have a speedway out there called Exotics Racing, and you can go to the track. They have things you can pay for, but you can go open and sit in Ferraris and Lamborghinis and all these cars for free and take pictures. And so that's where my kids got exposed to Vegas is we would just fly there, and we would just go over there because it's free, but it's amazing to the kids.
But I
And so
guess how do they know what activity or what city to go to? Is it just I want to go to Seattle or South Carolina and go to the zoo? Like, is it just do they know or do research for these? Is it something like you plan months in advance?
No, it's generally something that they have an idea. Like last year, one of my favorite ones was we went to New York last year. My 8-year-old is obsessed with Home Alone, and he kept asking to go on his day trip to New York. And like I was saying earlier, logistically, it needs to just be 2 hours or less. And New York's like a 4 or 5 hour flight for us. And so when he asked to go, I just kind of was like, yeah, we'll go someday and brushed it off. And then he asked again, and then he asked again. And so then I realized he had to have a reason he was asking. And then so I was like sitting there brainstorming, like, why is he asking New York? Why is he asking New York? And then it clicked. And I went and asked him, I said, are you wanting to go to New York because Kevin went to New York and Home Alone too? And he's like, yeah. And he never told me that part. And so once I realized that, I was like, shh, going to New York, because now I can't say no because now I know the reason.
Right.
And so we booked a trip to New York, and then I found out I was like, gosh, that'd be so cool if we could do some sort of Home Alone tour. And I looked it up, and sure, so we booked a place at the Plaza Hotel where Kevin stays, and I searched Home Alone tour, and 2 3 years before we went, the Plaza, if you stayed there, also does a Home Alone tour that you can pay for. And so you get a limo, and you get the cheese pizza that Kevin gets, and you get the 16 scoop ice cream, and the room service brings to Kevin's room. The limo tour takes you to all the places Kevin went. You go to Central Park, you go to the Empire State Building, you go to FAO Schwartz, which was called Duncan's Toy Shop in the movie. And so it usually starts with some sort of seed that they planted or something. So, like with my oldest, he wanted to go to malls. And so I'm like, okay, logistically, where's close? Vegas is close, so we can fit that in. And then my other son kept talking about New York. And then when I realized why, oh, he likes Home Alone. Okay, so let's go do a Home Alone thing. So it usually starts with some comment they make, and then I figure out how I can, turn it into something special.
I'm over here really like trying to. Okay, so look, let's how okay the rules. So it has to be 2 hours or less on the flight. You have to be able to come back the same day. Those are the only two rules.
That's how it started. It's now evolved into we can do a weekend thing. So the rules are more flexible now.
Oh.
It's more like it's more, and this has only changed in the last year. So now it's like 4 hours or less. So I think the farthest we'll go is the East Coast, and then we bought into a membership thing at a place in Cancun that the kids really like, and surprisingly, Cancun's only 4 hours. So we've been doing Mexico here and there as well, but besides Mexico, nothing international. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's cool. I've never heard anybody try this, but I think to your point, it's just continuing to create memories, right? Just continuing to build those bridges and pathways so that as they get older, they have plenty of great experiences to draw back from, not just daddy's in his room working, mom's, helping dad. So I think that's awesome. I've never heard that before, so that's awesome, man.
Yeah. Well, I tell them, my kids, like I said earlier, they're getting exposed to materialism, right? As they get older and they're starting to get in Nikes and fashion and peer pressure of looking cool and things like that. And so they've asked me, they're obsessed with Nikes lately. And so they've asked me, why don't you go buy some Nikes? And I have to explain why I just don't really care. And so it's been an interesting conversation lately to your point about memories. And so what I tell them is, look, guys, we're fortunate to be able to do a lot of things, but it doesn't mean we have to do them. And so other than my house, I don't have anything fancy. I don't have, I don't have a Rolex. I don't have a fancy car. But if it's memories or legacy, those are the two things is how I define it. Memories or legacy, I'll throw all my money at.
Ooh, wait, I gotta make some more notes. Okay. If it's memory, tell us why though.
Well, it's just like you said, kids don't listen so much as they watch. And so I can tell them, hey, um, do something special in your future, try really hard, have a work ethic, strive for success. Like I can say all these things, but they're going to learn way more by witnessing it. So when I say, instead of me saying, work hard so one day you can have financial freedom and freedom of time. That's a lot different than them experiencing the possibility of seeing other cultures and exposing, because it's going to do the opposite. So if I just show them the world, once they're exposed to it, then I don't have to preach all the stuff that nobody wants to hear or is cliche about working hard. Because they've been exposed to these cool things, they're going to want to continue to experience cool things. So as they get older, they understand the value in pursuing the things that they find interest in. And then by default, to support that interest, they have to figure out how to work hard to facilitate that. So for me, it's memories for me, memories for them, and expanding their mind. But then it also plants the seeds of like, look, this is why you see dad working hard, and dad does these things to so they can connect the dots and go, oh, that's the outcome. And so then now they can see it in their mind to go, okay, if I want certain outcomes, I've now seen what it took to facilitate the foundation to get that.
So, do you think the only way they can continue to facilitate those as they move into adulthood, do you think that that would only be entrepreneurship, or do you think they would be able to do that with the regular job?
Oh, for sure. I don't care what they do. I'm starting to, my 12-year-old's getting old, as he's getting old enough to have these conversations about life choices. I've always been very clear, like, I don't expect them to, of course, it'd be great if they did, because entrepreneurship is such a great thing. It teaches you who you are. Um, all the reasons to be an entrepreneur, um, are often different than what people talk about. So yes, of
Yeah.
course, once you get the opportunity, if you're fortunate enough to have financial freedom, that's amazing. But the bigger values are the learning lessons and the freedom of time. So of course, I think it'd be admirable if they pursued something in entrepreneurship because of all the other things that come with it.
Mhm.
But I literally have no preference for what they become as long as they enjoy whatever it is that they become.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So how about this? So you're talking, I get a lot of discipline coming out of what you're saying. You're very forward thinking. So like what would you say are two or three practices or things that you think has contributed to you being successful enough to the point where, hey, we can go not only do a day trip, but also do the activity and come back? What would you lend that to? Maybe two or three things that you're like, hey, if I don't do these, I'm not able to, whether it's function to your maximum capacity or potential.
The first thing that always comes to mind on this type of question is just my childhood, where I learned or was able to witness, um, those are circumstances that I wouldn't want to foster if I were the adult in that position,
Mm-hmm.
and so it created a very clear outline for me of things to pursue and things to avoid, and then once I started to understand the power in having that perception of optionally looking at things that way, then I was able to draw parallels and go, well, it's the same thing in business. And so then when I had, the last two people I worked for before I started my agency, the one I talked about who ended up going to prison, and then the one before him, um, marriage fell apart, cheated on his wife, got into drugs, um, like all these things. So it's like I've always I've been fortunate to see early on the mistakes that other people would make and the impact that it would have.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I could see the outcome of it, it made it very black and white for me to go, well, I don't want that, so don't do that thing. And so that's been a huge part of um, creating my appreciation for delayed gratification. Um, so that's probably one of them, especially nowadays, because social media is just such a highlight reel,
Right.
and and that's fine. Like share your wins, um, but it creates such an unrealistic perspective of what goes into true happiness, and so I think just witnessing life would be the one thing, and then if I had to pick another thing, it would. I guess two other things come to mind. One is the memories and legacy thing that we talked about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I love my agency, I love entrepreneurship, but the second comment ties into the third comment. the third comment, I'll kind of skip around a little bit. The third comment would be like figuring out who I am besides a husband, a father, and an agency owner. And that's been something that I've been diving deep into in the last year. And, in Costa Rica, I don't know if you remember when I asked John C. Maxwell, I basically asked him the same thing. And then I had the opportunity to go meet Kevin Harrington before he spoke. And I asked him the same thing. And I went up to Kevin and I said, Kevin, do you know who you are? Do you know who Kevin is? And that's the conversation I asked him. I said, besides a family man and an entrepreneur, have you found your personal passion? And like, that's what I'm trying to figure out right now is like, um, we have a property up at a lake, and a couple winters ago, I was driving up there. I don't even remember why I was going up there. One, because it was early. Two, because it was in the middle of winter. But I was driving up this canyon, and there was a guy that was fly fishing, and it was freezing ass cold. And he had to get up even earlier than I did. And I drove by, and I remember thinking, that guy probably is having the time of his life right now. And I got thinking about how passionate he had to be to get up early and go through that crappy cold weather and to sit in a freezing half iced over river. And he was just loving it. And I was like, I want something like that. I want something that I can, no matter what the climate and circumstances, I can be that passionate about. And so that's always stuck in my mind. So tying 2 and 3 together would be like, I'm on this. Entrepreneurship affords a lot of things we talked about. So the financial freedom, the freedom of time, but the freedom of exploration, the self-discovery process, because you're in constant challenges and you get constant rewards. And so, why am I doing this? I think the fact that I'm trying to figure out why I'm doing this is why I'm doing this.
Okay. Okay. All right, so let's keep rolling right there. So now that you've had these different experiences and you've done so many other things, you've had the family, you and the wife are good. What would you go back to your high school version of yourself or to college Damon and say, hey, what would you tell him?
I've thought about this before, and I have a really simple answer. It would be change nothing. Um, I think I've been lucky to learn these lessons, and they've all turned out to support a version of me that I'm proud of. So I wouldn't change anything.
Okay, that's a strong answer right there. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, to wrap this up, because I know you got to go save the world. I know you got to be dad of the year, husband of the year. If there's something that you could leave to another business owner to encourage them, maybe they're struggling, because I think you're even about to tell me some story about a guy who was
Mm.
talking about the billionaire one. So feel free to share that one. But if you could share two big lessons you've learned in having a successful family structure as well as a successful business, because people, let's not joke here, he is very successful. We didn't even get into all the great things that he does with his business. But if you could talk to the next up and coming marketing agency, young guy, maybe freshly married, just had a kid, what would you tell them?
You got to prioritize the things that you appreciate the most. So we talked a lot about family, and I think for a lot of people, that will be what they envision as prioritizing, but it can be other things too. So, maybe you're single, maybe you love rock climbing, whatever you're passionate about, identify those things, because you can't create a construct to protect between business and that passion unless you identify what that passion is that you want to create a construct around. So sit down and take the time to prioritize what it is that matters most to you, and then you reverse engineer it from there. And so look at your day and go, I generally wake up at this time. I generally go to bed at that time. So, okay, great. That's the window you have to work with. And then within that window, here are the things that I would like to accomplish. And then from there, you further whittle it down and continue to reverse engineer. And you end up finding these building blocks of where you can piece together the things that you want to prioritize to be able to consistently support them. So an example in my case is I'm not a morning person. I don't prefer to wake up early, but for the last 10 or 15 years, I've gotten up most days at 5 a.m. And that's because when I look at my time blocks that I have to work with is I want to get extra work done, but not at the expense of working after 5. So then that means I can either work before the kids wake up or after the kids go to bed. And the trick with that is, even though you tell yourself your kid's bedtime is 9, that really means their bedtime is between 8 and midnight. And so like you don't know when bedtime actually is.
Right.
But I do know my kids will never be up at 5 a.m. And so for me, then I can go, okay, well, then by process of elimination, Damon's time to get in extra work is at 5 a.m. because then it doesn't sacrifice the thing that I prioritize in front of that, which is time with my kids. So you have to reverse engineer your time blocks based on your priorities. So my day, it'll vary, but generally looks like I wake up at 5. And this actually just recently is currently evolving. So I'll give the historical one and I'll tell you what I'm kind of changing is wake up around 5, take a couple minutes to get moving. And then I have a rowing machine. And so I like rowing because you don't have to warm up. It's a full body workout. And I can't psych myself up. Years ago, I could psych myself up to lift weights and do all that in the morning. And it's not in me anymore, but I want to work out. And so the rowing machine, I can just sit down and start going. And then by the time I'm like 10 minutes in, it feels good. And then I can keep going. So then by 6 o'clock, I woke up, worked out, and, maybe knocked off one project on my list. And then, so I have basically from 5 a.m. to 7:30 or 8 before the kids start waking up. And then I'll take about an hour off and I'll just hang out with the kids. So whether they're in school, whether they're not in school, I'll just hang out in the morning. And then from 9ish to 5 is when I work. But then in between then, I'll take a nap. And so
In the middle of the day?
Yeah. So so you can see, I don't know if the listeners can see, but right here off the side is a 6-foot beanbag.
No,
So I'll
we
take
can't
it.
see it. I see the guitar, the acoustic.
This brown thing right here.
Still can't see it.
All right, let's see a little more. Below the table.
Yeah, we see it.
So there's that beanbag I bought last year because I started taking what I call tramp naps. And so my office is ground level, and so there's a window off to my right where I can walk out to the backyard. And my kids would come and knock on the window and, hey, Dad, or they'd be playing tag and they'd be like, can I run in here and hide? And so I took the screen out of my window so the kids can run in and out. And then one day I walked outside and I was just like, I'm just gonna go lay down on the trampoline. And it was like the most amazing, it sounds so dumb, but it was the most amazing thing. Because you sit there and you get like the heat off the black trampoline top and you get the wind underneath you and you get the sunshine reflecting off of it. And it was so comfortable. So I was like, I'm going to do that again. So during the summer, I go pass out for 20, 30 minutes every other day out on my kid's trampoline. But then in the winter, I was like, I can't do that. It's freezing. And so I bought this bean bag. And so, but here's why I do it though, because we're talking about like family and things like that is, I'd be burned out and tired by the end of the day. So I had to keep my energy up a little. But then the trick is I can't go take a nap upstairs because the second I open that door and they're like, Dad, 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 Dad. Like,
yeah,
when I'm in here, they know I'm in here. But when I go out there, like
it's free season.
Yeah. So I'm like, how do I maintain my nap repetition without exposing myself out there? So I put in a big 6-foot beanbag in here. And then I'll show you one other thing. The audio listeners won't be able to see this, so I'm going to try and explain this. So right now in front of me, I have a button. It's just a simple on-off button, right? And so I'm going to walk away from the mic for 10 seconds, and I'm going to tell you what's going on, and maybe Cameron can explain it. But behind me, I'm going to go turn off the light, and then I'm going to open the door. And what you're going to see is what this on-off button is doing.
He is now moving from the chair. He has gone to the door. He has opened.
See that light?
Oh, it's a neon light.
So what's going on is there's an on-off button that's a wireless button to a disco light. And so that's the Dad's on air light. And so you talk about how do you balance family and work without interruptions and things like that. And we set we created uh, these circumstances where it's like, how do I um, record an episode with Cameron without being interrupted, without having to yell at my kids to shut up because they're being too loud.
Right.
And so we create these little things. And then what you can't see also is I made these on the front of my office, is I made these really cool signs made out of barrel planks. So like a wood barrel. And so they're like the curved wood planks, and have these little custom engraved signs that say, I can't remember what they say exactly off the top of my head, but I made a post about this when I got them a year or two ago, and it says there's two of them. One says something along the lines of um, do you need it? If you don't need it now, unless you need it now or you're dying, ask mom. If you are dying or you need it now, or you just need a hug, you can come in. And so that way the kids know, like, okay, it's not that dad doesn't want me around. And if I need dad, I can come in. But if I don't need it now, or mom can help, then that helps out dad, and then I can still get my answer.
Pretty much. That's my version of, is it an emergency? Is somebody bleeding? Is somebody hurt? Then it can wait.
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
deal. Same deal. All right, cool. Well, hey, this is it. I know you got to go save the world. So, is there tell the people how they can connect with you? Maybe they've seen, if you're watching the video version, you see SEO National is the company. You see the personal branded logo in the back. But if they want to be able to reach out to you, whether that's just to connect, or maybe they're like, man, this guy is so cool, I'd love to do business with him or partner with him. How can they do that?
Yeah, you can just go to damonburton.com, and then if you want to read the personal stuff, there's a personal blog there. If you want to read the business stuff, there's business stuff there. And if you want to learn more about SEO, there's a free book there. So that's got it all.
Oh, look at that. He giving y'all a free book and everything, man. Y'all need to go check that out. Make sure y'all check that out. Anything else you want to leave with the listeners, or which are mostly probably other agency owners like yourself? Anything you want to leave to them? Any heads up? Make sure you don't. Or why don't you end us with that story you're going to tell me at the beginning about the millionaire
Yeah.
billionaire? I think that's a great ending.
Okay. Yeah. So I literally just walked back into my office right before we hit record, maybe 5 minutes prior, from a meeting with a really successful gentleman that owns this huge brand. And so he's really networked as well. And we got talking about some of these things that we've talked about today, about the importance of family. And he was sharing a good friend of his who is a billionaire, right? So I would think it's fair to say a billionaire is pretty successful. But what had happened was this gentleman went to the other gentleman and said, I'll pay you this big chunk of money. I see that you have a good relationship with your wife and kids. I don't have a relationship with my kid, so here's a big chunk of money. I think he said it was like 100 grand. If you can help me solve that. And he went on to talk about, so he chatted with the kid and went back to the other guy and said, you know what, I don't want your money. If you insist on paying me, it's not to talk to your kid, it's to mentor you, because you're the one that has the problems. You're the one that's, your whole life's goal has been to become a billionaire, and you've now hit it. But really, wasn't 10 million good enough? Like, what more do you get between 10 million and a billion? Yeah, and so
He
you
may say
keep
900 million is a big
yeah,
enough difference for him.
yeah,
But what did
but
it cost, right?
yeah, and so that's kind of the theme of a lot of this is, the one guy that I worked for was really greedy and selfish and lost his marriage. The other guy that I worked for was greedy and pushed the envelope and ended up in prison. Um, you know, this billionaire gentleman has had. There's always a cost to something on the other side, right? And so that's why it's important to prioritize the things that are important to you. And if family is one of those things, then it's kind of like the tree analogy. When's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. It's the same thing. When's the best time to start protecting the time that you value with your family? Because you can't go back. Like this billionaire guy, he might be able to make the relationship better, but it'll never be what it could have been, you know? So we all have those things that we want to prioritize that we say we'll get to later. And ironically, it's often the things that matter the most to us that we always see, that we think we have unlimited time, like with family, because you see your family every day. And so you think they're not going anywhere, but eventually they do. And so those are the things that you kick the can down the road until too much time's gone by. So I think it's really important, whatever your thing is that you want to prioritize. Um, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. It adds up over time. And so the soonest time to do it is yesterday.
Dang, that's crazy. And I guess to your point, as we end, like we always think like I'm doing this for the family. That way they're never gonna have a want or a need. They can get the best of everything. But that's crazy to think that you can make $1 billion and you're willing to pay 100 grand just to have a better relationship with your kid. And we know that's money doesn't change that or fix that. So I think that's a pretty awesome leaving and ending quote. Damon, thank you again for joining us. If y'all want to connect with him, he already said it, but I'm going to say it again, DamonBurton.com. That's the personal side. That's the business stuff, or just to connect with him. I'm sure he'd love to join your podcast. As you can see, this guy got so many insights, and he's been doing it long enough to be able to recognize that he's doing it at a high level and still smart enough to continuously adapt and evolve it. So thank you so much for joining us here at Legacy's Journey. Guys, we got more episodes coming. If you think you got somebody that would be great for the podcast, let us know. We'll check them out. Otherwise, it's going to be people that I know personally who are killing it both in business and family. So until the next episode, we'll catch y'all later. This is Cameron with Legacy's Journey. Peace.